Hiya, it's Owlet here. Sorry about the long gap in review. I had no internet for over a week, so I have missed out on most of the Sherlock drama on the internet, so I'm a bit late to the game, and that makes me a bit sad. But hopefully some of you still want to discuss the episode. I mean, with the internet, we've got like, what, endless hours of discussions, years worth, because goodness knows we probably won't get the next season of Sherlock till 2025. I kid. I'm sure they'll make it a bit faster than they did last time. Oh, my battery's saying it's dying. Please don't die, battery. Okay. I think that this episode in many ways was more revealing about Sherlock and John's relationship than the actual previous episode, which seemed to be more about Sherlock confessing his feelings for John, but this kind of, as in feelings of friendship or platonic love or however you want to ship it. I mean, it can be your OTP or it can be your one true friendship. I don't really mind. There's definitely love there. You cannot deny that there is love on some level. And I think that was very apparent in the way that John marched into the crack den and was like, I'm going to find me my adventure since I can't find Sherlock, and then happened to find Sherlock. And you could tell that when the doorbell rang, he wanted it to be Sherlock at the door, even though it was that other woman. I feel like this episode was very intense and a lot happened in a small amount of time. I actually felt physically sick during the shooting scene because I really didn't know what was going on, and Sherlock's mind palace was very disturbing and very alarming, and I found the film techniques of showing what could have happened and what is happening was very much like the Sherlock Holmes films, and I really loved that technique, so I was very happy to see it in the Sherlock show. I feel like this season has been like an amalgamation of BBC Sherlock, Elementary, and the Sherlock Holmes films. They've all kind of come together in some kind of modern Sherlock Holmes union, which is really groovy. I'm totally all for that because I love all of the Sherlock, so it's kind of nice to have them all on the same playing field. I thought it was very amusing to watch junkie Sherlock, but also very horrifying because again it kind of gave you insight into what Sherlock was like before Lestrade came along, because there was hints of that in early season 1, and I feel like a lot of this episode kind of came full circle, including the last scene, well, towards the end of the episode, where he was at Morganson's house with all the laser lights on him, and that was very much like the final episode of season 1 where, you know, Moriarty had all of his laser lights on it. I don't know if Moriarty's really coming back. I'm hoping he's not, because it's very hard to fake shooting yourself in the head. And I just feel like we've had that Moriarty run and it's time to have a new big bad. I feel like it could be someone using Moriarty's like face and shadow and elements to make people think that Moriarty is back, like a copycat. But it might not necessarily be him. I also feel like we haven't really come full circle on the Moran, Sebastian Moran case, so that could be connected to it, because he really does need to take Moran out, because that's how the books work. I do love that I got my canon of the return of Sherlock Holmes. I mean, not the return of Sherlock Holmes, the final problem. We had the direct line of give my love to Mary, which was almost the same as love Mary, which is what he says in the book in his letter. We also got the dummy decoy, which I was talking about in the previous episode, where when Sherlock does come back, he uses a dummy to make it think that it's Sherlock up in in 221B Baker Street, but it's not him, and I felt that they did that really well with having John there and then Sherlock being in the background using the voice to make Mary think that it was Sherlock. That was very clever. I just feel like it was a really well written episode as far as suspense was going, but I also feel like at some points I tuned out. Like the previous episode I was glued to the screen, and up until a point I was, but after about the 45-minute way I was like, oh, it's a lot of dialogue and it's not actually that gripping, because Morganson was intensely creepy and very well played and just so calm, but I found that a lot of that was very like, cool, what more do you want to say? I don't know, blackmail is definitely very, very sinister, and the whole licking people's faces was weird, and he was very weird, and at first I thought maybe he had Google glasses, much like Sherlock I assumed thought he had, but then I realised that they were just making him think like a robot, which I guess he was trying to show that he thinks differently to how Sherlock analyses things. I find it surprising that Sherlock did not pick up on anything of Mary's aliases and past. I mean, Mary must just be incredibly good at her job. I like that Mary is also still badass, and that she, you know, turned out to still be an incredibly cool and complex character. I find it weird that Sherlock had that fake relationship, and at first I was like, oh my gosh, what on earth is happening? I was just as confused as John. I was like, what, why? Not only are you doing drugs, but you have a girlfriend, and my world is collapsing in on me. But no, it was very, and then part of me was like, I wonder if this is all a ruse, and it was, and I kind of liked that they were both playing each other. That was quite fun. I feel like there were some truly heart-wrenching moments, like absolutely heartbreaking, where, you know, John finds out about Mary and they're in the flat, and you can see that John is completely falling apart. And let's be honest, at this point there is no amount of therapy that can bring John back from post-traumatic stress from just knowing Sherlock and everything else, on top of having nightmares and dreaming about Sherlock. Everyone knows that one. He watched Sherlock shoot somebody, and his wife is also a serial killer. Well, not serial killer, assassin. So, poor John. I didn't like how they kind of blamed him, like, oh, it's you, you're drawn to them, because, to be fair, I mean, he might be drawn to danger, but that's not really necessarily, like, he chose Mary because she's totally badass killer on the inside. I feel like that was a bit, and it was really upsetting to watch John blame himself and kick the stool. And whenever Martin Freeman's voices catch, like when he goes to say something like at Sherlock's grave, and in this episode too, when it breaks, it just breaks your heart. And more so was Sherlock when he says, you chose her. And it was not just saying like, you chose Mary as your wife because of who she is. I feel like that was almost a point where Sherlock was saying, you chose her over me to some degree. And also that if Sherlock had not faked his own death and disappeared for 2 years, maybe he wouldn't have chosen Mary, and John wouldn't have been hurting as much as he was. And it was hurting Sherlock to see John be that distressed. And then you could watch John in return be as distressed when Sherlock started to go back into cardiac arrest, and it was all just so intense. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be sick. I can't handle this. This is just too many, my emotions. It's just too many things going on. But overall, I felt like it had a very classic Holmes vibe. We had the drugs in, we had Wiggum. It was very exciting to have Wiggins in there because he's classic Sherlock Holmes, and he even features in the Young Sherlock Holmes series as basically the head of the Baker Street Boy gang, because he is very deductive as well. And so it was like, oh yay, the protege is coming, but it also means that Sherlock's likely to retire. So, and you had the beehive reference because you want some foreboding and foreshadowing of like, there will be beehives, you will get old. Because that's exactly how I should write the show. I should not write the show. I could not handle that kind of pressure. How badass has Molly been this season? I mean, she's really gone from meek to completely kick-ass. She slapped Sherlock a lot, even if it was in the dream for half of it. Well, not dream, but like shock of being shot. I'm surprised she didn't cut her hand slapping those cheekbones, but it was very cool. I also really liked the idea that Moriarty was at the core of his mind palace, like in his deep dark cell. He does think that he is equal to Moriarty, and Moriarty represents all the doubt and truly dark thoughts that Sherlock has, and that was really upsetting and also really intense. And Andrew Scott was absolutely terrifying, and I think it's partly his voice and also partly the expressions. I still feel like on some level that Moriarty is more terrifying than Morganson, which says a lot because Morganson was really weird. But I also liked that Sherlock seemed to be against Morganson because he was a bully, because he picked on people who were different. There was just so many different levels of like psychology at work, and I think that that's partly how the episode became overwhelming. It felt a little bit like the Moffat muddle that tends to happen in finales when there's so much happening and you're like, I don't know what to watch or what to think about. Oh, ha, ha, ha. So it's kind of like that. Oh, I absolutely couldn't believe that not only was Sherlock dying, but in his mind palace they brought his dog into it. It's like, oh my goodness, do you want to just make us cry even more? Not that I actually cried, but you know, it's already bad enough that Sherlock's dying, but then they bring like his childhood dog into it, and like childhood Sherlock being bullied by Mycroft. It's like, you know what, just fine, it's okay, I just yeah, it was pretty intense. I'm still recovering. I watched the episode about 2 hours ago, so my brain's still a bit like, now I have just sitting around waiting for a new Sherlock episode. It's gonna be fun. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with this blog in between times. I've had a few suggestions to just rant about geeky things, so I'll see what I can come up with, because I do watch, well, I don't watch a lot of TV shows, so I only watch Doctor Who and Sherlock mainly, and Elementary and Teen Wolf, but I don't watch them consistently enough to make it remotely decent blog reviews out of it. But hey, I'll have a think about it, and maybe stuff will happen, and maybe not. Maybe you'll see me in 8 months when there is a new Doctor Who episode. Who knows? Anyway, that's what I thought about his last vow, and I'll see you all in the comments. Toodles. P.S. Oh my goodness, Christmas. That was just crazy intense watching his parents and Sherlock drugging everybody, and also Mycroft said, "Here be dragons." That is cool. I really feel like overall this entire season has been written by Tumblr. It's just, it's amazing. It feels like they read about all the fans and just all the fandom stuff that we had been planning and talking about for 2 years and just used it all to create the season, which meant it was wildly different from the past 2 seasons, but also gave us pretty much exactly what we wanted in terms of relationship development, crazy weird antics, hilarious dialogue, intense angst. We had it all, and it has been one hell of a ride. So hopefully seasons 4 and 5 will be just as great. I also feel like this series hasn't felt as much like mini movies, but actually more like episodes, long episodes, but it felt more like a TV show. Even with the introductions, like the title sequence has felt more like, I don't know, NCIS TV sequences, so much more like a crime show and less like, it's about Sherlock, woo! So, yeah, I'm gonna stop now. Bye!